Hello, our perspectives, watchers, viewers, that's the same thing, listeners. Thank you all for being here and coming back. This is part two of really the wrap up of our Identity Who Am I series that we've had launched about what? We launched it, what, 2 months ago? Has it been 2 months?
Goodness. We launched it in, was it October that we launched it? Yes.
It was October, yes,
It was
because
October.
December 1st. Oh, and I guess we should introduce ourselves. I'm Martina.
I'm Lyzeth.
And welcome to Perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah, but we're just continuing our conversation. Like I said, just a wrap up of the series.
Yeah.
But yeah, started in October. Right. Okay. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, this week is the airing of our last guest, which is the lovely Sherida Morrison. And we kind of left off talking a little bit about the faith community, which when you watch Sherida's video part 2, and we won't talk a lot about it because we want you to watch and listen to it yourself. But it really focuses on faith, the faith community in general, and the faith community here in Chicago, mainly on the South Side, I believe. And it's a shorter video too. It's actually under 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So people who are like, hey, I can't watch it for a long time, it's only like 27, 28 minutes. It's actually a really good conversation. And she has always something really good to say. But recap of part 1, we really were just talking about some similarities and differences among our guests and how that impacted us and so forth. And again, yeah, like I said, we just really kind of wrapped up the last one talking about faith. And I said I was going to get more into that, but let's say anything you would like to say.
No, I think you summarized very well what these the past episodes, so part 1 of this conversation. And I think this part 2, I think we're going to dig into much more of maybe some of the themes or some of the things that we kind of talked about in last week's episode, and kind of dig in. We didn't want to get too political on that episode because we were still kind of wrapping up our conversation, and I think if we pick up on the faith sort of conversation that hopefully you got to listen to with Sherida, it really talked about sort of the way that a lot of our churches, whether knowingly or unknowingly, really kind of perpetuate the notion of white supremacy, and how I say we because I am a Christian, so like how if you've been listening to us for a while, how we just perpetuate that white supremacy, how some of our actions don't always really come from a true Christian biblical place, and even how some of our theology and thinking and the core issues that we sort of grapple with are two that are very dominant, and this won't be a spoiler because most people can kind of look and see that it's typically abortion and same-sex marriages or gay marriages, and that's sort of like,
because that's all that Christianity wants. That's okay. I'm gonna let you finish. That's all. Okay.
No, go ahead.
I'm just like, because I think Sherida talks about it in a really good light as well. But it's oftentimes it's like there's nothing. I would say the white evangelist, and then also within, I know Black churches too. Latino churches are predominantly. I'm sure it might be a similar note, but just got me thinking about how white supremacy flows through there. But like we've said on this channel a lot, white supremacy is in everything. It just is, because it's really all that we're knowing. You're like, what the hell does that mean? White supremacy is everything. The standard of everything that's pretty much acceptable is viewed by white people. It starts with white people. Like,
Yeah.
you know, here, at least here in the United States, I would say that.
Yeah.
And in other countries, it's probably seen differently, but there's still colorism that exists outside of the United States.
I mean, there's still some countries that probably look through it on a white is better kind of notion.
It is, and it's just so that's what we mean. We say like white
Yeah.
systems do everything, and why not Christianity and just church and faith in general? Again, because that's really the standard, and so that often trickles down to Black churches, to the brown churches as well, and you know, really, it is it's really a shame because it's often like, you know, like you said, Lisette, and that Sherida touched on, it's such a negative light. And you know, there's so many things that people can choose to focus on in terms of faith. But they always go to people, they talk about those damn abortions and homosexuality. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing else that we can talk about. Like y'all, this is not the basis of Christianity. But for a lot of these people, that's all they talk about. They don't talk about how when you have your period, you technically shouldn't be around men. So if you have a husband or a partner that's a male, or you live with your father, technically when your period's on, you shouldn't be around him. But most of us are. We're not going anywhere. You live in the same space. So it's always so interesting to me what people choose to focus on when it comes to faith and Christianity. And there's so many other things that are in the Bible that could be focused on, that need to be talked about, but they're not talked about. It's just often these two things that always freaking comes up. That's
Well,
it.
and it's these two things that allow Christian leaders access to political power.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't challenge the systems. It doesn't challenge changing or dismantling our systems. It perpetuates it, right? Like abortion, you know, going after abortions is just going after women's rights. It's just going after women and making sure that women continue to be submissive and continue that you have this control over women and their bodies. Like that's what this is. And that is the basis of patriarchy in this country.
Yes.
Right. Like, you know, and I think that's what that is. So the white evangelical church, which is probably the one that has the most political power in this country, aligned itself to just have access to power. Like, and I think that's the unfortunate part, because then you have these smaller churches who have taken up this mantle of like, okay, yeah, like we're gonna go after, you know, gay marriages and abortion and shame the women for making these decisions, when it's like it's a personal thing and you can get between me and my relationship with God. That's it. Like I don't, this whole thing of this notion of it, you know, and I think it's the same thing with homosexuality and gay marriage, where it's like I can't judge you. Like that's not my role as a Christian. I'm here to love you and show Jesus' love and, you know, things, and whatever I believe or don't believe, I'm not going to push my personal agenda or my personal whatever on you. Like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if you're a person of faith or whatnot, like you'll answer to whatever higher power, you know, you believe in and all that. And I think that's what it is. And I've always believed that the church could have such a bigger impact in really working towards equity in our communities. I think one of the things that Sherida mentions is, you know, in some, you know, certain block areas of the city, you know, within like a mile or two, you might have like 100 churches.
100 churches, people.
you know, and it's not like a huge mile, you know, radius of it. And it's like, so if you have 100 churches and they're all kind of operating under sort of, you're assuming they're operating under, you know, Jesus's teachings and really like, then why aren't they out there helping the poor, feeding, clothing, praying, and doing these things and really helping their community and bringing it up? And it's like, so it really begs that question of like, is the church really doing what it's called to do?
Where's the impact?
Where's the impact? Or is it just, you know, a space for people to come, show up on Sundays and show out, and then go back to doing what they were doing Monday through Saturday?
You know, I wonder too, like, you know, there are, I know, Black pastors. I'm thinking of like the ones who would be on like an evangelist scale, who, you know, have the mega churches and things like that. And I just wonder what sort of political influence they might have, because I would say for myself, I've never heard anything. And I can't think of one of those big mega church Black pastors off the top of my head. But because I was want to say, like, even if like our Black and brown churches wanted to start having some sort of impact, where do you start? Where do you start? Like, what do you, you know, and you know, you just named off a lot of stuff that they could be doing. And I'm just thinking, how do you do that without the power and the money and the privilege that these big white evangelist church have? And yeah, that's just, I guess it's kind of like the question that I'm throwing out there. Like, how do you do that?
I think it's separate. I think that I think my point is, you separate yourself from the political power. You shouldn't be in political circles.
Yes. Now, yes. So I do believe in the separation between church and state, but that's not how the United States works.
You know, and I think,
yes,
I don't think it's the role of the church to bring equity through politics or through corporate America. Like you are the change in your community. Like if you, I'm like, the thing is, like, if there are 100 churches that are active in a community, you should be able to see the impact. And it doesn't, I think a lot of people think impact and they think like these huge things, like they have to have like a community garden and they have to like be giving out, you know, food every week or things like that. And I think there's churches that don't have that capacity, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, your doors should be open to community, and you do what you can do with what you have. Right. And you make that impact, even if it's just, you know, towards 10, 15 people. And it's sort of like, that's the role. And if you are fortunate to have one of these mega churches, there is a church on the South Side that has, that runs like a food or it's running a food pantry and like all these things, because they have the large congregation and they have the money coming in and they're able to do those things. And that's great. But I think a lot of the times the churches try to do that to align themselves to like either get closer to politics, to get closer to sort of that corporate America, and to like, and then they're like, oh, you know, we're just going to take those dollars and do good for the community. I'm like, I get it, but you're kind of on a slippery slope of, we're not really going to challenge them because they're giving us money. It's the same thing when we did our nonprofit series, right?
Oh, yes.
Where like a nonprofit, you know, takes the money from a large corporation or whatever that doesn't really align with whatever they might be with their values, but because they're giving them, you know, a 6-figure amount or more, they're like, well, we're going to take it because we need it, you know? And I think some churches are like, okay, we may align ourselves with whoever, and take that money because we're going to do good with it. And, you know, and sometimes it's like, you know, God provided a way. And I'm like, was it God? Like to your point earlier.
My grandma said, was it?
Your grandma said, like, was it though? And I think a lot of times when you start getting into those spaces and those areas, you start kind of maybe living out your Christianity in the gray zone a little too much.
And I guess from that, what you just said and what I said before is that how do we get equity in the Black church? Like, if we don't have the politics, if you don't have the money, because that's where the changes are going to happen. Like, at least the big changes on the big level in terms of equity and ending white supremacy, if that's even a thing that could happen. So how would you do that if you don't have those political connections, you don't have the money? I would say that you got to change the fucking systems. And that's what I would say, because I'm thinking, how else are you able to really get that sort of equity? I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I think my question to you is, when you talk about equity, you're talking the church leading the charge in dismantling these systems?
Maybe so. Yes. Maybe like, how do Black and brown churches?
See, I see it differently. I don't see it in a way that the church plays a role in dismantling the systems. It's sort of like being the active sort of role. Because I think we end up being in that gray area too much.
As long as we're with the politics.
Because when you get because I think you start getting to that gray area of like, well, if I want to continue getting it closer to more power, I might have to compromise, or I might have to do this.
Exactly.
And it's like, and I think, to me, Jesus didn't call the church to make a change through politics, to make a change to government, all these things. Like, can Christians be in those systems and make changes and be like, yes, you can be change maker. If you're a Christian, you're a change maker. But I think the role of the church is to show God's love in their communities.
And stay the hell out of politics.
And, and I think that for me is, and that's just me coming from a very, just my understanding of the church. Like, I don't know what some pastors might think I'm crazy.
Well, in this system, they might. But I think I get you now, because you're saying Christians can make a difference, but not the church. The church should not be affiliated with that. Okay.
Like, I don't think so, because I think, again, you start operating and you start sort of compromising and you start doing things and you just sort of like lose what your mission is, because like I said, like when we had our nonprofit series and we talked about how nonprofits will then just have to continue maybe not making an impact and allowing others to make decisions. So allowing the donor or the funder to sort of say like, I want my money to do this. And you're like, but it needs to go over here because this is where the need is. But the funder is like, no. I feel like that's how the church, and I think the corporal body of the church, because the church is not a building, it's not, it's people. But I think the way I think church impacts change is by truly living out what Jesus set out, like love your neighbor as you love yourself. But if you don't love yourself, we gotta work on that. Okay, we gotta work on that, because we gotta make sure you and I think it's that, like, what is the church as a whole doing to really help their neighbor, to really sort of say like, hey, and it could be as simple of like, hey, if we can, let's do a potluck and people can come and eat food in our church or whatever. I think there's something to be said about I think one way that they can change things and make a difference in sort of the sense that you're thinking, Martina, is this sort of like, okay, we need to start decolonizing our Christianity.
Oh, I like that. I like you said that.
And there's this whole sort of church movements throughout the United States that are pushing towards that. They're saying like, we have been talking and teaching the Bible from a very, colonizer lens, from a white supremacy lens, and I think that's where the church can make a difference. And that's where it can make sort of like a change of like, okay, we need to teach what the Bible really teaches, and we have to address this manifest destiny that was used to colonize, the indigenous, people here in the United States, especially the United States. Like, I know you have to decolonize throughout, but like we live in the United States. And like these things and this idea and this notion that um, we teach the Bible from a white supremacy lens and from a white lens, and have this savior complex. Instead of saying like, okay, I don't need to go to Africa on a missions trip, whatever, versus I'm going to help here and do something here, because that's what I can do, and these things. So I think it's this notion, and I've heard it. I don't know much about it. Maybe in the future we can have some of these pastors. You can reach out to some of these pastors that I kind of follow and sort of see that talk about this. Like, how do you decolonize? How do you center Black and brown voices within the church? Because a lot of the voices that you hear are white.
Yes.
Are white males. And I think that's how you start tackling the systems within the church. And really changing that dynamic and that sort of, and I think there are pastors out there that want to do that and strive to work on it. But because, as we always say, white supremacy is in all of our systems, it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah.
And it takes work, but I think it's centering, it's churches centering worship, and having these Black and brown artists who are out here making, praise and worship music and all these things, like, and centering them into sort of these spaces and things like that. And a lot of times, I mean, if I listen to a Christian channel or radio station, most of those people are white.
Yes.
It's rare.
I'm more of the gospel end, but I'm gonna say that one is mostly African, well, Blacks, and they're not all African American. But yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I just want politics to get the hell out of religion, and vice versa. I don't want it to intermingle. I just don't, because
I think that's a very like United States thing. Like I can't speak, but I feel like it's much more of a United States thing, because white evangelicals, have taken such a hold on here around it. And then you have Black and brown churches that have followed that example. And you just kind of have strayed away. And this is why you have churches that, kind of try to sweep under the rug anything that bad that happens in the church, any scandals or anything, because that's what the white church does, and it's because it's, white supremacy has taught white people to like just, sweep it under the rug and move forward, and and it'll be fine because you won't have any consequences. And I think the church in America doesn't, for whatever reasons, always kind of never, and I don't say the church, but I think church leaders, and particularly church leaders that abuse women, that abuse kids, that abuse their power in whatever way, it's rare that they suffer consequences in the criminal justice system.
Talk about it. They don't want you, yeah.
And they sweep. I mean, I came from a church where things were swept under a rug for a long time, and it was dealt within the church, and because they didn't want, it to go to whether get the police involved in things. And it's like, no, you kind of, the crime was committed or something, or and it's like, oh my goodness.
You just talked about it, just because that just relates to, that's why people have so much trauma, because of these things that are swept under, even though I know trauma is a buzzword.
I mean,
but it's just, and it just makes me think of how, because oftentimes you do hear that, be like, do not air your dirty laundry in front of the mixed company. Don't do this in front of people. Well, we keep family business in the family.
And that's the church. I mean, I think the church does a lot of harm when it does that. I mean, again, when you sweep things, especially when I mean, wasn't there like I know there was a church here in Illinois where they're like, oh, a pastor, I don't know, we had a fair or whatnot, and you kind of hear about it, and then it just like poof goes away, and you just kind of like, because the church dealt with it, right? Like, or and things like that. And I think the Catholic Church was kind of grappled with all of these allegations and proven allegations and all these things, but because you have such political power, and you're connected, and you are able to kind of sweep things under the rug, and you're sort of like these things, and it's like, is it fair? Is it right?
No, I'm gonna say no and no.
And I think that's where, for me, looking back now, I'm like, geez, like how did we allow it to get this far? Because it's a human thing. Because people are always like, oh, well, where's God? Why did he allow this to happen? I was like, why are you trying to blame God when it was humans that did this?
Me too. I think too. And at some point, often with religious leaders, I was literally just watching. Oh my God, what was I literally just watching?
What were you watching, Martina?
Something of, I love watching about conspiracy
Yes,
theories.
I know you do.
I was watching.
I mean, I did too. We could become a conspiracy theory channel if we wanted to.
We really could. I think people would go for that though. Okay, we'll come back to that. But I was watching something. It was a documentary talking about. It was about a multi-level marketing, which is the MLM, which is pyramid schemes, and they touched on, even though religion is not that, or the church per se, but they had touched on how people start to view like the leaders of the church is like God, but he or she is not. That's not God. So why are you? Because they were talking about how some of these people from these big churches, how their parishioners and congregation will like raise money to like buy them mega houses, get them like private jets. And I'm like, and they will use that to verify like, well, I just had to be in Seattle the other day, and last night I had to fly down to New Orleans, and then I had to go to Munich. So you getting me this private jet will help me spread the word. What? No. And it's like, that's not God. Like you are worshiping a person who's, this is not God. This is not the same thing. That often bothers me too.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. And I remember like those, especially the televangelists when I was growing up, were huge. And they're like, send me money and your prayer will be answered, or you'll be healed, and all these things that people did. Now they do it a little more sneakily, like they're like sneaking around like how to do that. But and you have, one of the things that bothers me the most is when I see a pastor who is living a sort of luxury life and their congregation is suffering, is struggling. I'm not saying that pastors and their families don't deserve to live comfortably and have the nice things in life and all these things. I was like, but I don't think it's right if your congregation is struggling and suffering, like if you're not giving back to that. Like I remember there was this whole thing of like pastors wearing like name brand shoes and these expensive shoes, and like how can they afford these shoes, and then I'm like, nothing wrong, you can have whatever shoes you want, whatever, but I'm just over here like, but can you really say that you're pastoring and taking care of your charge, or your, in the Bible, like, take care of your flock and your sheep and all that, like, and because you're a pastor, like, but can you really say that when you have some that are suffering and are struggling and are struggling, whether financially? Like, what are you doing to give back to your own congregation? Like, what are you, like, there's one pastor that I follow that I've seen takes the money that the church gets and gives it back. Like I'm talking about like millions of dollars that they give out to like community organizations. I've seen them pay off people's mortgages and like all this. And I'm like, okay, like that to me is what the church is supposed to do. You know, and it's not even that they're getting donations from like other people. Like it's people from the church that are giving, right? There's people that can give into thousands, or that sort of give $1 here, $2 there, and at the end of the year they're like, okay, this is how much we've saved and we've gotten from our church members, and all. Let's take care of our community. Let's take care of people. Let's show our community God's love, and that we're not just here taking up space in this huge arena or whatever and not giving back. Yeah. And I think that's what bothers me when I see pastors with large congregations who you don't see give back, who you don't see give money to the local food bank, to know that one of their congregation members has been struggling with their mortgage and is about to lose their home, and is like, hey, what can we do to help you keep your home? Like that's to me what a pastor should do. And if you have that privilege, right, like if you have a church that's privileged enough to be able to like allow you to live your life comfortably, because a lot of times pastors, their salary comes from what is giving in offerings, right? Like that's how it works. Like offerings and tithes is what a portion of it goes and is given to the pastor. So what do you do with the rest of it? Like what, after operations and all of that, like
that's what they got. Jimmy Choos.
But it's like there's so many things, and I hate to be like, I don't want it to be known like, oh, Lyzeth over here saying that pastors can't have nice things. I was like, no.
It's not what you said. It's not what
like,
you said.
I'm like, you can have nice things, and I pray that everyone has nice things. Yeah. We all should have nice things.
Yes, I agree.
I'm like, we all should be blessed enough. I mean, that's equity, right? Like we all should be able to access all these nice things.
Yeah.
But our systems don't allow certain groups of people to have access to those things or figure out how to get there. And the thing is, I think we talked about this in another episode, is how poor white people in this country don't realize how they are negatively affected by this white supremacy systems.
Yeah.
And it boggles my mind because they're the same ones who be kicking and screaming to build that fence, to throw those immigrants back to where you go back to your country, and are being racist towards blacks. And like, I'm like, y'all are suffering too by these systems and y'all don't even realize it.
Well, it's that mentality. I told you that those Republicans, but mainly those conservatives, that pick yourself up by your bootstrap type of shit. Well, if you ain't got no way to pick yourself up and you ain't got no resources, how you gonna do it? And they like, well, I'll just, I'm gonna just go find a way. Okay, ain't nothing wrong with you going to find a way. I'm all for you going to find a way. But like, I think oftentimes they forget that everybody can't just pull themselves up by their bootstrap. That doesn't work. It doesn't, because of these issues that we're talking about, these systemic issues, and including you, a poor white person. You are not able to do it, but you can't really see it. And I think, again, I'm just thinking from being raised in the South, it's a lot of pride, Yeah. There's a lot of things that go in. And for poor white people, they are prideful. They may not have shit, but they be proudful than a motherfucker. I'm gonna just say it's not all of them, but a majority, they just so proud. And I'm like, look, everybody want to be able, like you just said, everybody want to be able to provide themselves, their families, their loved ones with a decent life, with a nice living. It's not what we're saying, but you can't even get there, baby. You over here supporting the system that don't support you.
And that brings back something that I've been really thinking about, particularly with the work that I do. And I tried explaining this to someone at my work, and I said, you know, one of the, and I remember saying this, I was like, one of the things that I've been thinking about and struggling with is the idea of equity. And I was like, particularly equity within the systems that we have currently. I was like, because I feel, and I said, I was like, I feel that it doesn't matter how many steps we take forward. Like we can take 10, 20 steps forward, you know, in that equity direction, but we'll always be 10 to 20 steps behind because these systems are designed to keep us behind. Yeah. And I'm like, so it frustrates me sometimes when I'm over here trying to like say like, oh, we're gonna, you know, we've created equity here. And then I'm like, but have we really created equity? Because the system is still the same. It hasn't been changed. There's no conversations around changing the systems. We've just made a small little tweak to it, to a portion of, not even to the whole system, to like this small sliver of a system. And okay, you might have some equity here, but it's not gonna, things don't trickle up, right? Like they trickle down. You know, like, so if the system over here is what needs to change, and we're not operating over here and making these changes, then this little change over here is just going to trickle down here. And it's only going to trickle down like one level because we just made, maybe that we just reached the second level, and that first level might see it and have a sense of equity, right? Have a sense of equity because you're like, oh, wow, like we made this change and yay. But I'm like,
right.
It's not here. It's not here. And what was interesting was this person didn't quite grasp what I was saying. And you know, they were a white individual. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, I think I know what you mean. And they said something, and I'm like, I didn't have the energy to sort of get into it. And I was like, yeah, I guess it's something like that. And I was like, and I'm like, and I kicked myself. So I was like, I probably should have tried to challenge that person. But I was tired. I was like,
you're probably tired physically.
Here I am trying to explain to you how this portion of what I did doesn't really change anything because it's not trickling up.
And that's such a theme, though. If you look across just the community that I have, you know, I've worked with and that you currently work with and people we know, it's always, it's like, well, we're doing this one thing, or we might do it twice. Okay, but where's that sustainable piece? That's like what we're getting at. But in order to be sustainable, you got to have the systems change. So if you're not changing the systems, how is it really sustainable?
It has to change up here.
Yeah, it has to change.
Because even when you say like, oh, we're creating sustainable long-term changes, you're creating sustainable long-term changes down here. Like I said, level 2.
Here ain't got that. They ain't got.
We're on level 2, but we need to change level 100.
Yes, they.
And level 100 is like, yeah, you go ahead and change level 2. You go ahead and do that. It's not going to impact me. There's way too many levels here. It's not going to reach me. It's okay. Yeah, go ahead and make that change in level 2. It'll trickle down on level 1 and we're good. And it'll seem like we got some equity going and we can show that there's equity. But as we heard today, you know, if people in power and decision-making aren't equitable, then nothing is equitable. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, like one of the things that we heard, I think in one of our, hopefully future speakers, you know, they were sharing of like, you know, if decision makers and leadership don't look or represent, you know, the people who are going to be impacted, then you'll never reach equity. And it just, I was like, it just reminded me of that conversation. It reminded me of like, yes, it's a damn 10 steps forward, but I'm always 10 steps behind because the systems aren't being changed. Because everything is trickling down at level 2 to level 1, but level 100 needs to be changed. And we can't reach level 100 because they don't want to.
They don't want to because they're benefiting from what's already happening.
They're like, okay, you know, and it's like, and they'll say things to make it seem like they want equity, and they'll say that we're doing things, and they'll say that we're changing this and we're doing that, and we're creating pathways for, you know, for these careers and pathways here, and we're, you know, education systems. I'm like, yet are you changing the education system at the level where it needs to change?
And that's the thing. And you know, this is not to dispel people who are doing this work, because we need those people, because
yes.
you are the experts in this. You know how to do it at that level. But this is talking about taking what like taking your expertise times 100
to that level 100. We got to get those. And the thing is, like, the people that are in that level where change can happen, they're too afraid to bring in,
because that's it. They are
experts.
And that's a lot of it too. I think there's so much fear. And don't get me wrong, people don't want to change because they're benefiting from the system, but people also are afraid. They're fear because they don't know what will happen. And they think that, and again, I think we touched this on last week's video, but it was like, people think we want some sort of revenge, or, you know, you're going to try to get at them. Look, ain't nobody got time for that, okay? We ain't nobody got time, because there's no way in hell Black and brown people could avenge for all the shit that's been done against them.
Why would we? Why would we want that on our hands?
Why would you want to the things, you know, the things that people have?
No, we're trying to move away. We don't want to remember that. All we want is the same opportunities and the same access, and ensuring that, like, future generations have quality healthcare, have healthcare that's not gonna, like, make them go on bankruptcy. Like, how many people go bankrupt because of all of the health bills that they get if they get released? Like, it's mind-boggling that a country like the United States does not have universal health care because of this warped idea of what socialism is, because you've allowed these people that benefit from the systems to make you think that, like, oh, universal health care, that's the first step towards socialism. I'm like, do you even know what socialism is? Like, I'm like, y'all are here acting as if, I'm like, I can't, like, I'm just getting so mad.
That's at like a broad level, but even just a granular level, we have people out here with periods who can't even get tampons or pads. And that should be, there's no reason that there should be people who do not have access.
I don't understand why you're charging me for something that that I have no control over.
Your body. And we don't even, that's the basic thing.
Let this be a man having a period. All those things would be free.
Everything. I mean,
free.
Women, I mean, look, we've heard about it. Women, we get charged and taxed more just because of this type of shit.
The pink tax, as they call it.
I mean, it is a real thing. But even at those levels, at just the simplest level, we can't even do that. We can't even keep people from being homeless. Like, we shouldn't have homelessness. And people are like, well, what the fuck do you mean by not having homelessness? It shouldn't be a thing. Like, that should not be.
Shouldn't be hungry.
It should be hungry. And they were like, well, how are we going to change it? Well, shit, I don't know, but we got to start somewhere. We in this country with brilliant people. And it is hard. It is difficult. It's not going to be easy. But a country and a world of all the brilliant people we got, you tell me we can't start somewhere?
And the rich people that we got?
Right. We can't start somewhere? Like, I just don't know.
I mean, you bring up such a good point that there's so many brilliant minds.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, when I say brilliant minds, there are community members, there are community leaders that have solutions that will impact in a very systemic way. But yet we don't have those conversations. Nobody wants to have a conversation of what the education system should be, of what our food system should be, of what our healthcare system should be. Like, nobody wants to sort of bring together these, because I know I've said it to you a bunch of times, like, if y'all will just allow me to bring people and have a conversation and some round tables of, like, hey, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
What needs to happen? What does the system have to look like? What should it be? Because I'm a person that's like, you can't dismantle a system without having a plan in place.
Yeah.
Without having something that's going to replace it. Something that's going to, like, okay, we dismantle it, we're doing this and all. It's like, okay, but what comes behind, and nobody's done that. As far as I know, I haven't seen someone.
I don't, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think people have, at least as far as we know, like you're saying. But I think, you and I probably, and people listening and viewing, have been a part of exercises where you think of like these
Yes.
dream scenarios. And it's great. Like, again, this is not to discredit anybody and their love and their passion for what they do, but where's that going? Okay, you create this ideal world, but what's the next step? And I get it. Like, it's hard. Like I said, it's hard. It's hard to do, but we keep living the same cycle over and over again. So it's really like you can't keep bitching about something and things are not moving though. Like, something has to change.
And then people are like, well, where's the money going to come from? I was like, the same money that's supporting the systems right now.
Same money that goes into
this new planning. This like it's a, to me it's a lie that we don't have money.
Oh, it's a lie. It's a
lie.
It's a lie. It is definitely a lie, and I agree with you. It's
and like, if not, tap into these billionaires. I'm sure Oprah would gladly provide some dollars.
Anyway, she donates all the time. I'm sure she would be happy.
It's like there's people out like it's just people don't want it. People in power don't want it to happen because they're afraid of losing their power, of course.
To a certain extent, too. Even the ones who donate because they like, and I don't know why they think if they give away, I don't know, like half of their money, it's gonna disappear. Like, you're probably gonna make it back.
Yeah, like it's just there's just so many things that could be done, but because I feel sometimes the United States is very lazy. In so many ways.
Traditional ways we would think of. Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things where it's lazy, and it's not the people that are on the ground in the community, not the community leaders, not the people that are actually out here doing the work. It's the people that are in power in these companies, in government, and I'm talking about the old timers in government, right? Like the people that have been there for a very long time, and it's like and people who benefit from the system staying the same, like they're just like, it's just too much work. It's just too much effort. It's gonna take time and all these things. And I'm like, but it's stuff that we need to do.
It's always gonna be something. It's always something that's not gonna go the way you want. I mean, every day something might happen to you just on a everyday basis that you don't want to happen, but you have to move the fuck on. Like, you gotta pick it up.
And it just, to me, just boggles my mind. It just, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think we provided any answers to anything.
We didn't. We just used this episode to vent.
But I think, if you're listening or watching, like, what do you think? Like, what did anything make sense to you? Did anything resonate with you? Because Martina and I are like just sounding boards right now to each other, but I love to hear what you think, to know. So you can DM us on Instagram. You can comment on this video because we really want to know what you think. Like, what do you think? Are the systems equitable in your opinion?
I think that.
Yeah. Why do you think that? Because I'd be curious to know why. And if you don't think that they're equitable, like, do you agree with Martina? Like, we need to make these sort of conversations start happening now, where we start creating these dream scenarios, right? We create these dream scenarios, but there's action items behind them.
There's no execution. That's no.
Because again, like I said, like for me, it's definitely this whole idea of like things are being changed at level 2, trickle down to level 1, but the change that's going to really create sustainable and equitable long-term changes is going to happen at that level 100. Because if you can make the change up here, it'll trickle down. It might take a while to trickle down
It's gonna do.
because it's been so long that the system's been the way it is that it's just going to take time, and you're going to lose some people because not everybody's going to agree with it, not everybody's going to like it. And I think that's another fear thing, where the fear of losing people, of like oh my god, you might lose the workforce, so
losing your privilege.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, so it's very real. So I'm just curious, if you're listening or watching, please comment, DM us on Instagram. We're also on Facebook now, so you can message us on Facebook. You'll find those links in our comment section, and we'll kind of make sure we link all that in the description boxes and everything. But yeah, it's been a great conversation, Martina.
It's been a great conversation, and I do. Yeah, and you and I, we always say we talk about this because this is what we do. But
yeah, totally.
I think it was you that used the word it's these band-aids.
Yes.
They want to put on things, and it's always the powers that be. They want to do enough just to say they did something. It doesn't help you in the long run. It might help you for a day, a month, a year, whatever. But then it's not everlasting. And it's just to say, well, I did something. I volunteered. I donated. I donated so many computers. It's just to say you did something, and you want to just go and tell other people that you did that.
Especially when you think about the large companies, like I'm pointing my pen now. I'm so heated.
My pen.
I have a pen.
The whole time.
And these companies who say like, oh, we donated, we gave money, we're working with so-and-so partner, nothing, just to say, like you said, that we did something, right? Or that we made some sort of change that seems to be, equity and equitable and, and sustainable and long-term. But it's a Band-Aid. It continues to be a Band-Aid. And I think we've been conditioned to just think in this like Band-Aid
just accept
sort of mentality. Like we've been conditioned to be like, okay, yeah, this looks good. This looks like nice. Like we're just gonna put a Band-Aid. And even the most well-intentioned and maybe like well thought out sort of like things that could lead to sustainable changes somehow end up being Band-Aids because the system stays the same.
And it's it takes, again, I hate this saying, but it makes sense at times. It takes everybody, but it takes less of the little people and more of the big people at the top. It takes that's what it takes. Like, yeah, you can be going to the food pantry, you can be donating, volunteer every weekend, but that's right here. That's not getting at this. That's not getting at these Fortune 500 companies who have political power. And they use that to benefit themselves because this is a country made of greed. So it's just like we need more of this happening. And
you made me think of something. I probably saw it on TikTok because that's where I see anything nowadays and learn anything nowadays. But they were talking about straws and how society has made you believe that if you just stopped using straws, you'll save the ocean, you'll save all this.
I was thinking that like 20 minutes ago, and I couldn't interject, and then I lost it. But that was on my mind. Oh my God.
And in reality, it's these corporations, these large companies that are like destroying our oceans and everything. But they made me believe that it was my little plastic straw that I get at McDonald's or wherever.
Listen, baby, you having a paper straw is not going to help much either.
It's not going to make a dent.
Oh my God. I was literally just thinking that. And it's just so funny you said that because, honey, people, and they be trying to call people out, especially, because everyone hide behind their computers and shit. But they love to call people out. Well, you should use this and don't use paper plates and don't listen. I understand you have a love for conservation. Okay.
Great.
But that's not 500 people or 1 million people using paper plates is not going to help save that polar bear out there. That's not like, it'll help, but not the help that we need. Sorry.
Yes, not at the level that is needed to make an impact.
Not, you know, it's just not. And it really, and that pisses me off too, because people love to interject and say, well, you need to be using, paperless paper towels. So I had something for somebody with that. So paperless paper towels, which are becoming a thing. So basically, okay, people saying we need less waste, but you're also using more water, and people bitching about that. So if you have paperless paper towels, or in this sense, I guess I should say, if you use things like, okay, people say, well, I can't use paper plates, or I can't use paper cups because it's paper. You should, what's wrong with washing a dish? But you're using more water. So either way you look at it, something is being impacted.
These large corporations, these large, corporate America thing that will make you believe that it's your fault, that it's me, my little human self's fault, that we don't have any more water, that our animals are dying. And I was like, it's not my fault. Like, I have come to that realization that it is not my fault, me using a straw or a paper plate because I want to wash a dish during the holiday party or whatever. No, that's not. No, it's no. It is. It's this idea that we don't hold accountable the companies and the people that need to be held accountable. Yet we will go after the poor individual who literally has no impact on anything.
No impact. That's just like, a few years ago they had the soda tax. You see, that shit didn't last. I mean, there was a lot.
I'm not gonna get on that one.
But that shit didn't last. No, we have time to get it in that one. But that one was a big one. But it's like, stop blaming consumers, because again, all this strapped up in white supremacy. It's just like, you're not, like you said, you're not.
That would be such a great conversation to have. White supremacy
And consumer.
Consumerism, our food systems. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe keep us accountable. If we forget and you are interested, or if you're interested in kind of hearing about white supremacy and consumerism and the impact of all that, like, let us know. Like the video, DM us, comment, let us know, because we'd love to know if that's of interest to anybody that's watching or listening.
I think that would be a good one, because it's so many levels. And like, again, it's just, I feel bad for the polar bears. I really do.
I'd be crying over the polar bears, any animal, like the cheetahs, and all, like the lions.
But honey, it takes more than a few million people not using paper plates. And
it's definitely these companies, corporations, and industries that have for years, decades, been damaging our environment. Mm-hmm. It's not my paper plate. It's not my plastic straw. Because, girl, I can't stand those paper straws.
I don't like them either, I'll be honest. I went out, me and my roommate went to see a movie last week, and we got I got water, she got a soda, and they gave us one of the little paper straws.
Not it.
And it's like, almost like, if you don't want to agree with this stuff, people are like, well, what's wrong with you? This is helping our planet. First of all, this is not really helping the planet.
Y'all can direct them to watch this episode.
Yes, watch this episode. It's helping here, people. It's not helping here.
Be
cute, though. Be cute with your paperless paper towel.
It's helping at level 2, not at level 100. That's what I'm going to be saying from now on.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid for now, but if that makes you feel good, do you
go ahead. I mean, and to those people that are doing the work and educating, and like, I understand where you're coming from, and I get it, and kudos to you and doing that, but it's just, again, we've let society kind of hoodwink us into believing that it's our fault, and not, again, holding accountable the powers that need to be accountable. I mean, that's what politics do. That's what politicians do. that's what leaders in these large companies and like Fortune 500, like they make it the little people's fault, and it's terrible. Like that's a whole other episode too.
Yeah, that's a whole episode. But yeah, she's like, that's right. You're interested in the like consumerism and like white supremacy. We would gladly do some videos or podcasts even, you know, or just
yeah, like, we'll do some episodes on it, and maybe we can find some individuals that we've been trying to do and bring in some of those perspectives.
I can get one of my friends who has paperless paper.
I had not heard of paperless.
I can't even really describe it, but it's not because well, I shouldn't say, well, I'm not sure if it's paper. It's actually it's reusable, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know how often you can reuse it. Again, this is not something
It just doesn't sound sanitary to me. You know what? I don't know.
I'm not quite sure how that worked, but okay. But yeah, I think this has been a really good episode, and I think we get ready to close it on home.
Yeah. But, you know, thank you for listening. Like we mentioned, if there's anything that resonated with you, let us know. If you have any ideas about future topics that you like for us to explore or bring some other voices into it, please, you know, comment, DM us on it. But, you know, appreciate you all continuing to support us and do that. Please follow us. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook now. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but I know we're also on other spaces. I don't know, but you know, we're out there. You can, wherever you kind of listen to your podcast, you can find us, and we'll kind of throw the link out as well for that. But, you know, again, thank you for joining us. We will be taking a little bit of a break in January. So if you don't hear or don't see us in January, don't be alarmed. But you know, we'll be working behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're working behind the scenes. And we'll probably still do some Insta posts and Facebook.
Yeah, we'll see us. We'll try to go live. We might, you know, put out a podcast only here and there, so we won't do the video podcast. We'll just do the audio podcast, so you'll see that. But we're prepping and we're getting ready for the next series, which, as Martina mentioned, I don't know if earlier in or last week's episode, you know, we're getting ready for a great sort of next series, and we're excited about it, and you'll hear more about it in January sometime. But thank you, everyone. And if you hear this, it'll be coming out right by the holiday season. I hope you all have a good holiday. If you're hearing it after the holidays, I hope you had a good holiday. And we will definitely see you soon. Either see you soon or we'll talk to you soon.
Season's greetings.
All right. Bye.